Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Joe and I'm the dad.
And I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
You remember Monica that we had here a few weeks ago
Sure.
in one of our podcasts?
Sure.
She sent me a follow-up. She discovered how to keep her weight down in a way that it never happened before.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm always looking for tips on that.
She said when you shampoo your hair, it runs down your body as you're washing it off.
In the shower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she looked at the bottle, and the bottle clearly said, for extra body and volume. And she thought, man, I'm not going to use that anymore.
No, what do you do instead then?
So, she realized that the Dawn dishwasher detergent says dissolves fat that is otherwise difficult to remove.
I love it. Let's do it.
Sounds good to me. We're going to be cleaning up.
Dad, you and I care a lot about justice. That's why we started this podcast.
Yes.
Is we want to make sure that people that are marginalized, that are not given space in society and in family relationships, that we give a voice and we help to bring understanding and bring connection within families and within friendships so that those don't dissolve.
Exactly.
Does it ever become wrong when we push too far? Do we ever fight injustice too much?
I don't think so. In my book, it's the thing to do.
I would say that as well. However, as we got to thinking about it, I think that there can be a really big danger that we fall into when we care so much about justice that we push over the line, and there's a time where it becomes wrong to fight against injustice. And that's what we want to talk about today.
Okay.
When we first started having kids back before I transitioned, when I was married, we were part of a church that believed that children are a blessing from God. And many of the families in our church had a lot of children.
I believe that as well. You are certainly a blessing for us.
As we started having our own children, we had to decide, how do we feel about this? Do we want to have a lot of children or not? Now, if I had realized that I was going to be transitioning, we probably would have made some different decisions. When you have two, you choose to have a third one, people say, oh yeah, okay, well, 3 kids, that's a lot, but it's not too much yet. But then you choose to have a 4th child and then a 5th child, and okay, well, now you're starting to have a big family. And then we had a gap there between our 5th and 6th child, and people figured you're probably done. And then we decided to have a 6th child. And that's where I think you started making the joke that you would buy us a TV for our bedroom.
Yes, exactly.
And then we had a 7th child. And then finally we decided, okay, well, 7 is as much as we can do, and we're done now. During that time, when we were deciding, do we want to have another child? One of the frequent arguments that I would come back to is I would think to myself, imagine how devastating it is when you have a child that you found has died for some reason, has died early. It's always devastating when you have a loss. When somebody died too soon and you think, the world is a worse place because they're not here.
Yeah.
We feel like something is lacking.
It's, people say one of the most difficult things is losing a child.
Yes, it sure is. Well, I mean, I don't know, but from the people that have told the stories, I know when my grandfather lost my uncle, he thought that it would be my uncle that was performing that would be burying him. And instead it ended up being the other way around. And I remember seeing how hard that was for him, how much that really took out of him.
More so than when your grandmother died.
Oh, it's not what you would think of.
Exactly.
But it's difficult to lose
because
someone.
it's unexpected.
Yes. And so I thought to myself, that shows us the value of a human life. And if that is how devastating it is when we lose someone that's close to us, then it seems to me that as we bring a human life into the world, we're creating that much value. We're bringing something new into the world, a person, into the world with their own personality and way of looking at the world and surprises, and they make jokes and they view the world in a way that nobody else does. They bring a uniqueness to the world. It's what I think about in my Christian theology background. We would talk about the doctrine of, from the Latin, it's called Imago Dei. That's IMAGO DEI, Imago Dei. And do you know what that means?
Well, I didn't know what it meant, but you told me.
I did. It means the image of God. And it comes from the Bible in Genesis chapter 1, where it says that God on the sixth day created humans in the image of God, that there's some sense that we are a divine reflection, that there's something special when you see humans, when you see another person and you get to meet them and you get to interact with them. There's something that goes beyond the kind of interaction that you would have with a thing, with a car, or with a house, or with stuff.
Yep.
There's something way beyond. And so that's why we chose to have as many children as we did, is because we thought, look at how much value we're creating.
Well, nothing matters to us as far as stuff goes, but people matter a lot. I mean, take an example. If somebody were to have a car accident and, oh, they've had a car accident and, you'd say, oh, gee, I'm so sorry I wrecked the car. I don't care about that. Are you okay? That's what everybody says, because they realize that's the most important thing, not your 52 Chevy.
Right. We all understand that. We understand inherently the dignity of human beings and the dignity of a life. And I want to connect this back to our issue here. When is it wrong to fight injustice? When we start to vilify other people. When we start to say, I'm no longer disagreeing with the actions of that person or the viewpoints of that person over there, but that person over there is a garbage human being. And I've heard people say that they'll take people that they disagree with and they'll say, that person is a garbage human being, or I hate that person over there, or I would never want to have anything to do with that person. And they dehumanize somebody that is that they consider an outsider. Now we're no longer just fighting against injustice. Now we're actually taking this divine spark, this inherent dignity that another person has, and we're saying, I don't recognize that dignity in you any longer. You have done an action that puts you outside of the dignity that humans have. And I think most people would say there's a time where it's right to do that. And I would say, I want to call us back. I think that dehumanizes us. As we dehumanize other people, I think that dehumanizes us. It makes us somewhat less than we're supposed to be, because we're looking at this extreme value in this other person and we're saying, I don't care about the value that's in you any longer. That's not to say that we have to agree with them or we have to think that what they did is okay. But what it means is that if you really got to know that person, there's still something special there, even with the bad choices that they've made, even with the value judgments that they have made that we disagree with and that we would disagree vehemently with. And yet we would say, there's still something inherently valuable about that person. And I feel like the moment that we let up on that, the moment we ourselves take that step towards being less than human, that is how I have always viewed the world. I just feel very, very strongly about that. And it means that the times when we get angry, when we stand up, and you can think very easily of the times when you're angry. All you have to do is turn on the news, and you can get angry. And boy, we sure get angry right now, don't we?
Oh, we do, with all of the political ads that are out there right now and on both sides. And they don't talk about what they can do. They talk about how terrible the other person is.
It makes me angry, and I want to take the people that I disagree with. And there are certainly people in the biggest race right now that we're talking about. There's one of the candidates that I feel very strongly against. And yet, of course, we remember when there was an assassination attempt. We all rose up and said, that's not right. That there's something, even though I disagree very strongly with this person's politics, yet he doesn't deserve to have someone assassinate him. There's something that feels wrong about it. And if you don't agree with me, then I would say we're going to have trouble seeing eye to eye. Because I feel like the moment you say that it's okay to assassinate someone, you're taking a step away from your humanity. You're taking a step away from seeing the inherent dignity of every human being.
It's true. Every person deserves to be recognized, deserves to be heard. And you can disagree with them vehemently. But to decide the only thing I can do is eliminate them is way over the top.
Right. Particularly taking it into your own hands to decide that you're going to do this. Now, I, at one time in my life, was a total pacifist. I believed that there was never any place for war. I didn't think that there was ever a time for that. And I no longer think that. I think that that is overly naive. There's a time where we all understand that you have to do certain things in order to protect people. I believe that there is a place for the army.
Yeah,
I believe there's a place for the military. I believe there's a place for the police force, although I would have some concerns about the way that police forces often work. I'm not one of those people that think police forces should be done away with entirely. No, we need people there that are protecting us and keeping us safe.
absolutely.
But it's done under the authority of the government, which, not to say that the government is always right, but it's the best thing that we have to protect ourselves from saying, I'm going to take this on myself because I know better than other people. That's the step towards dehumanizing yourself and dehumanizing others. If we don't have this deep in our own hearts, we're going to have trouble interacting with other people in our lives. And that's what we'll get to next.
I am Mark Zemer, a listener and supporter of Transcendent. I've been a Lutheran pastor for 45 years, and oh, what a journey that was for me to understand the LGBTQIA community and what that meant. I was so not understanding and hurtful. So this podcast is incredibly important to really educate and understand and to hold relationships together. So I urge you to consider listening, of course, but also supporting. You can go to transcendent.com and click on the heart with a support button. You can give as little as $3 a month, and you can cancel at any time. Important for all of us on this journey of understanding, keeping relationships together, truly being people of love.
Do we have times where there are people in our lives that we're so angry with, that we're so upset with, that all we want to do is scream at them and yell at them, and we figure, I never want to talk to that person again? Every one of us has somebody that feels that way. We've done episodes talking about forgiveness and on trying to preserve those relationships. But I think that this is the real key to this. This is the real core. Because if we don't start from this place of recognizing the dignity of the other people in our lives, the imago Dei, that divine spark, that magic that's inside of that other person, we're going to have real trouble treating them with respect and honoring them the way that we really need to be, because we're going to be so concerned about our own dignity and, oh, I can't believe this person said this to me. Forget it. I'm never going to talk to them again. I'm never going to. Well, that's what destroys relationships.
Well, absolutely. And I can think of a couple of examples of people who were really considered the worst of the worst. And one of those was in a book I read called The Cross and the Switchblade. I mentioned that before. The Cross and the Switchblade was probably written in the late 50s or early 60s about a gang member who did a lot of really terrible things, but eventually completely changed his life around. He became a pastor and built one of the biggest and most influential churches in New York City.
Nicky Cruz, I believe, was the gang member, and then his interaction with David Wilkerson.
That's right. And that just goes to show you that we have value. And I've seen a lot of that as well. I can remember reading the story about Paul, who was at the time called Saul. And Saul had been killing these people. And all of a sudden, he became one of them. And they said, wait a minute, isn't this the guy that's been killing all of our friends? I'm not sure I want to be part of this. Isn't that right?
Right?
Yeah. And then they changed his name yet so we wouldn't know who he was.
I think, to me, this is one of the pieces that when I struggle with faith and my view of spirituality, and I've had a long, difficult struggle, particularly because of LGBTQ plus issues, though not exclusively. I think people in younger generations are more and more going through this, of really struggling with, does faith still make sense for me? And I'm by no means out of that struggle. I'm right now in that struggle myself. But anytime I think, I just don't know, faith isn't really, it doesn't have a place for me, I come back to this piece. Yeah, but you know what? I feel like there's something about humans and this inherent dignity of humans that I keep coming back to. And the best way that I know to express that is with this idea of imago Dei. And then when I'm dealing with people in my life that are maybe difficult for me, that I can see that image of God in them. Sometimes I have to remind myself, frequently I have to remind myself. But it means I'm going to come back and do my best to treat them with a sense of mercy and compassion and charity. And figure they've gone through their own story that I probably don't know. And if I knew their full story, I might view them differently than I do right now. That doesn't excuse their actions. It doesn't make their choices okay. But it does mean that I can look at them in a different way. So then when we're coming to relationships, maybe I've got somebody in my life that has been really difficult or made exceptionally bad choices. This could be on either side of an LGBTQ plus relationship. Oftentimes we in the LGBTQ plus community will look to the people that have been really negative towards us, have really hurt us. And this is not to minimize abuse, emotional abuse or otherwise. It's not to say that there's not a time to cut off a relationship, because sometimes you have to do what you have to do to protect yourself. But what it is to say is that when we steep in this idea of imago Dei, of there's an inherent dignity even in the people that we dislike, it means that when we are able to have that relationship with them in a way that's healthier, that doesn't feel toxic, that we don't have to strike back, and feel like we need to hurt them back for all the things that they've done to us. No, we can actually forgive, that we can love, that we can move on. And the danger here is that you might be hearing this and you would say to that person that you might have a broken relationship or maybe a strained relationship, I want them to listen to this podcast so that they would learn to treat me with a little more grace and dignity and respect. No, you can't control the other person. You can only control your own actions. You can only control the way that you approach that relationship. So I'm not asking you to send this podcast to the person that you're angry with. I'm asking you to think through, what does this mean for yourself? Because it takes two to tango, as we say, but only you are responsible for your own dance moves.
Well, I don't tango at all. My wife is trying to get me to just line dance. That's the first step in the right direction.
Well, if you can do that, if you can start by line dancing, then you can do a bit more. Now, I heard that you on your cruise recently, they got you out doing some dancing.
Yes, they did. And it was fun. And we did have a good time.
Well, that's what it should be. And that's what we want, is a life that is filled with dancing and with joy and with good relationships. But it starts by looking inward and looking at ourselves and looking what we can do.
Are there people right now that I really have a difficult time with and that I'm shoving away? Not so much. Not really in my circle of connections. I won't call them my circle of friends, but in my circle of connections, I don't have that kind of conflict. But in the area of national figures, yes, I do. And one of the interesting things about that is the fact that we make our decisions based on commercials that those politicians haven't even paid for. Other people are making commercials for them, and they're spending all of their money and all of their time finding something that somebody did 46 years ago. And they pull it out and they say, did you know at that point, I believe he killed the neighbor's dog? Well, I guess we shouldn't have him in there.
Right. In politics is the worst. And I'm so sick of it right now.
Well, I want to add to that. After that attempt on the former president's life, they all said on both sides, we got to tone it down. We got to really stop doing this. And right now we're going to be a little bit more civil to everyone.
Let's come back and have unity again, they said. And that lasted for all of about 30 seconds.
No, it lasted, I would tell you, it probably lasted a good day. And that's about it.
Yeah.
I don't know which one started, but it didn't matter.
Right.
And in fact, we probably would not be able to know which one started it. But I know neither side can say, oh, I'm taking the high side. It doesn't seem like it. And I don't think it's necessarily the people who are running. It's the people who are supporting them that are creating these ads that they don't even want. I remember talking to a local politician one time who talked to the person that was running against him for a local office. Mm-hmm. And there was a terrible ad out there about one of the candidates. And he assumed it was from the person running against him. But it wasn't. It had nothing to do with it. And the person running against him approached those people and said, I don't want that on there. He couldn't stop it. Isn't that interesting?
It's too bad. It really is too bad. Yeah. And unfortunately, the reason that they do that is because it works.
Yeah.
They say that everybody hates all of the negative political advertising that's out there.
But they believe it.
But when they poll people coming out of after they voted, and they say, why did you vote how you did? The reasons that they cite are all of the negative things that have gone on.
Yeah.
If you and I are going to avoid that, it means we start where we are and say, I'm not going to give place to that any longer. I'm not going to give in to this negativity. And it means you might need to put a kibosh on your social media and say, I'm not going to engage with the negative things on there.
Mm-hmm.
It's so amazing how people will say things to somebody on social media that you would never say in person. The moment that you do that, you are absolutely dehumanizing that other person. Why? Because the neurons in your brain are not firing to say, I see another human being in front of me. Something inside of us turns off, and we can dehumanize that other person and think there's a garbage person on the other side of the internet over there. And we don't think of that person as made in the image of God, as representing that inherent dignity that comes with being a human being. And we think all of a sudden it's okay to say things that are absolutely mean and terrible and disgusting. And I want to say that that is never okay. That we must discipline ourselves to treat people online the same as we treat people in person. And if you can't do that, it means get off of online.
Yes.
Turn it off. Go for a walk outside. Go listen to the birds sing. Go hang out with some people that bring positivity to your life, because we just don't need this. We need to bring ourselves back from this. And it starts with us.
When I first started my business, there was a businessman in our state that was highly respected. And I was one of the people who respected him because he had this motto that I loved. His motto was, don't walk away from negative people. Run. And it's true.
And there is certainly that time in that space that we need to surround ourselves with positivity. And part of that means refusing to be attacking and be just slurring the people around us that we dislike, of whoever those people are.
Yeah.
Let's stop dehumanizing one another. And that might be a challenge. But you know what's never a challenge? Is to listen to this podcast.
That's right. I agree with that.
We're grateful to have you here week after week, and we try to be that voice of positivity for you, bringing back that perspective of what can we do to make our relationships better.
And one thing you could do to help us make those relationships better is to share this podcast with at least one other person. We want to keep families together, and we want to save lives one podcast at a time. And we know we are doing that because we've gotten feedback from people that has been very heartwarming for us. And we appreciate all of you who have given us those really positive words. Thank you for that very much.
That's right. Don't share this with the person that you're angry with and upset with that's mad at you. But do share it with somebody that's going through a struggle in their own life that you're on good terms with. Someone that you know really needs this positivity in their life, because we all could use a jolt of that.
And with that, we'll see you Monday.